Hey there YouTube, Speedrobo here, and today I have a Legend World Toilet deck profile. I've been having a blast playing this deck, and I was very excited for the Toilet support to come out, and I feel like it really takes Fairy up to the next level. So you might notice that the buddy for this deck is not actually a Toilet or a Fairy, it is Red-Eyed Succubus, a Wydar Sarkal attribute. And this is because this is a bit of a hybrid deck between Toilet and Wydar. However, I feel like it meshes together very nicely due to the fact that a lot of the fairies already have the Wydar attribute attached. And I'll explain a bit more why I decided to do the hybrid as I go through the profile. So let's get started with the monsters, taking it from the top with the size 3s. 4 copies of Hanako in the Toilet. Can't have a Toilet deck without her. A 9/2/7 size 3 triple attacker that cannot enter the field by any means except for the effect of a Toilet item. So the only way to put her on the field at all is by using a Toilet item. And when she enters the field, destroy all cards on the opponent's field, and you gain life equal to the number of cards destroyed. So she is the deck's finisher. Size 2s are what's next. 4 copies of Paper Eaton Momin, a 4/2/5 size 2, call cost of 1 gauge, and when he enters the field, search your deck for up to 1 Toilet and add it to your hand. So this guy is the search for the item, which makes the deck consistent. A required 4 of. And then I run 1 copy of King of the Forest Zaltog. A 3/2/2 size 2, when he enters the field, put the top 2 cards of your deck into the gauge. So, the reason why I run 1 copy of him is it's the only copy I have and can find. Everything that charges gauge in Legend World is very hard to get your hands on and is very expensive, so run whatever you've got. I've got 1 copy of Zaltarog. He's a Wydar. He works. So the best gauge charger for a Toilet deck, especially if you're going pure Toilet, is the Hardworking Fairies, a card that I am going to cover in my spells a little bit later. So, if you have Hardworking Fairies, run that instead of Zaltog. And I stand by that. But I don't have 4 copies of Hardworking Fairies, and I don't have 4 copies of Zaltarog, so I run what I've got. Size 1s are the next on the list. And I run 1 copy of Odd Bird Harpy, a Wydar 100 Demons 4/1/3 size 1. When she enters the field, charge 1 gauge. So again, gauge charger, running what I've got. If you've got fairies, run that instead. Next, 2 copies of Spring-Heeled Jack, a 5/1/2 Wydar Sarkal size 1. Mischief Fantastic. When an attack by this card destroys your opponent's monster, charge 1 gauge. Same story as Oddbird. I'm running what I've got on the gauge charge front, and it happens to be Wydar, which does mesh with the buddy very nicely. Next, 4 copies of Great Wind Fairy Sylph, a 4/2/1 size 1, call cost of pay 1 gauge and pay 1 life. When she enters the field, you may choose and use one of the following 2. First, you can equip an item from your drop zone by paying its equip cost. This allows you to spam the Toilet. Or you can call a Wydar Sarkal monster from your drop zone by paying its call cost. So it's a way to get some extra gauge charge or your buddy on the field. Solid card all around, and it has the fairy attribute, so good stuff. And the last size 1 is 4 copies of Red-Eyed Succubus, a 3/1/2 size 1. Act, Demonic Eye of Temptation. You may discard a Wydar Sarkal from your hand and pay 1 gauge. If you do, draw 2 cards. Demonic Eye of Temptation, you may only use that once per turn. So, this is great draw power, and that's why I run her. I prefer, if you have Symbol Guard, and you want to run pure Toilets, you can use that instead in this spot. But I like this more because it doesn't have the life restriction. So that's why I run her. Let's go into size zeros. 4 copies of Skeletal Specimen Skull Dandy, a 1/1/1 size 0. Gentleman Escort. When this card enters the field, put the top 3 cards of your deck into the drop. And if there is a fairy among those cards, draw a card. Gentleman Escort only activates once per turn. Another great way to draw cards for Toilet, and it gets through your deck quicker, which is always important in Fairy. Next, I run 1 copy of Kate Sith in Boots. 2/1/2 size 0, gift from the marquee. If you have 10 or more fairy in your drop zone, your weapon gains +3 critical. This ability is fairly easy to activate with how much mill and gauge pay and just general going through the deck there is. And when this card is destroyed, mill 2. So, solid card all around. I run it at 1 because there are some cards in this deck that require multiple different Wydars or fairies in the drop in order to maximize their potential, so running a handful of one-ofs isn't a bad idea. And speaking of that card, Wind Frolicker Sylph. This card is absolutely phenomenal. A 2/0/2 size 0 with a call cost of 2 gauge. This card gets +1 critical for each fairy and each Wydar in your drop zone with different card names. This card text has been horribly misprinted in English, so it has been errated. Always check your erratas, kids. Always do that, because Bushiroad misprints at least 1 card per set, I would say, at minimum. So, whenever a new set drops, go to the official page, check the erratas. Yeah, so... Anyway, this card is absolutely phenomenal. It's so easy to get, at least 10 fairies and Wydars with different card names in the drop zone. And then she just becomes a turn it sideways, kill your opponent card. Good stuff, solid finish. Impact monsters! Let's talk about those. I run 4, and 4 copies of Sylph Fairy's Banquet. A 5/2/4 size 1 with a call cost of 2 gauge, and put a Wydar or Fairy monster from your field into the drop zone. When this card enters the field during your final phase, stand all Wydar and Fairy monsters on your field, and for this turn, all Wydar and all Fairy monsters can attack during your final phase. This card is great. She's a Wydar, she's a Fairy, she allows me to attack again. She allows this nonsense to attack again. It's beautiful. Items. 4 copies of School Campus Level 3, the 3rd toilet before you. That is a mouthful. A Fairy Toilet Weapon item. I have no idea why a toilet is a weapon, but okay. 4,000 power and a critical of 2, with an equip cost of, put the top 3 cards of your deck into this card's soul and pay 2 gauge. When you are attacked, put a soul from this card into the drop zone. Counter, act, if there are no souls in this card, put this card from the field into the drop. And if you do, call up to 1 toilet monster from the drop zone by paying its call cost. This is how you get Hanako on the field. So the whole idea behind this deck is that you equip this as early as possible. Get your opponent to attack you a bunch, or use spells or other monster effects to remove the soul, and then kill your opponent with Hanako. That's the idea. There it is. And last but certainly not least, let's talk about spells. First off, 1 copy of the Hardworking Fairies, because that's all I have and all I can find. This was a free fight promo card from 2015, I believe, and it is a Legend World staple that they decided to release as a free fight promo card. Gosh darn it, Bushi. Counter, put the top 2 cards of your deck into your gauge. This is needed. Everything in Legend World revolves around paying oodles of gauge. This is the charge spell, and it's impossible to find. If you have it, run it. If you don't, find the best alternative you've got. The Spreen Heel Jack works okay, and he's probably the easiest one to get. So if you're on a budget, I recommend running Jack at 4. If you've got this, run it. If you've got Zalturog, run it. If you've got Oddbird Harpy, run it. Run whatever you can to charge gauge. Next, 4 copies of Scorn of Gremlin. Another card that's a little bit of a pain to find, unfortunately. You may only cast this card during an attack on your opponent's turn. Counter nullify the attack if it is not a link attack. So yes, this is a kind of standard, mediocre null. It's just standard null, but it's one of the best that Legend World's got, in my opinion, because it doesn't cost gauge. And it's nice to, you know, somebody attacks you directly, pull a soul out of the toilet, and then nullify the attack. Next, 4 copies of Benefit, aka Barbed Wire 2.0. Cast cost, put a size 2 or less monster from your field into the drop zone. Counter, put the top card of your deck into your gauge, and you gain 2 life. This card is great. And I know I've said this before on this channel, and I'm going to say it again. Get your benefits while you can. This card is phenomenal in pretty much every deck, and I like to run it in pretty much every deck I've got a spell spot for. If you just have an extra spell space, Benefit is a great card to include. It's heal, it's gauge, it's null. Great stuff. Three copies of The Door That Just Wouldn't Open. Cast cost to pay 1 gauge. Counter, nullify the attack, and if you have a toilet on the field, put a soul from a card on the field into the drop zone. So this is a way to get souls out of your toilet, and this can also nullify an attack at anything, not just you directly. It can also protect your monsters. So, talking about sideboards for a little bit before I go into my last spell, this is one of those cards that you're going to want to run your extra copies of in the sideboard, along with Meagy Nice Guy. So, if you run into a heavy soul matchup, Meagy Nice Guy in this will help. If you run into a situation where your opponent's playing something that's heavy on burn, and they don't feel like attacking you directly to activate your toilet, this and Meagy Nice Guy will help that. So, that's what I would put in the sideboard. And for the last spell, I run 1 copy of Buddy Fight Valentine's Day Kiri Hyoru. You may only have up to a total of 4 Buddy Fight Triple T, Kiri Hyoru, and Oswira Guard combined in your deck. So this is Oswira Guard. Cast cost, put a monster from your field into the drop zone. Counter, put the top card of your deck into your gauge and draw 1 card. So it's another benefit, effectively. And that's been my deck. Like I said, this has been an absolute joy to play, and I feel like it's very strong. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I've been Speedrobo, and thank you for watching. I'll see you later.